Good afternoon to you, or good evening already. It's 5:30, isn't it?
Good evening, Dr. Miraima.
Okay, so I have with me Professor Bruce Lloyd here at the Hub, and he's very, very well known and specialized in national visions and long-term planning and so on for many, many years in the industry as well as government. And then you have from Professor David Hand, as I promised when we were in Kampala, if you remember, all of you, from Data Science Institute. And you have seen my email, all of you. This morning I sent you an email in which I put an agenda of a kind, yeah, and I don't know if you had the email, and in that email there was...
Yes, we are online.
And you have had the email?
From Canada.
From Canada. Good morning.
Yeah.
Good
morning. I'm just trying to see, is that the one that you sent? Okay, yeah, I think I did get it this morning.
Fine, excellent. Well, you see, there are many of them, and some of them are in Nomo Gallery in Kampala, and others are on mobiles. If you can wait, Bruce is here, Professor Bruce Lloyd, Omar, yeah, member specialized in visions and so on, yeah.
Yeah.
But from the company's point of view, particularly private sector, and
Yes.
okay, I think you're the only one independent because you called in. I don't know what they are doing. You see, if you are trying to do too many fancy things, combine Skype with all kinds of other things, they don't interconnect with each other. They don't understand this. You have to be as simple as you can if you want to get on to do things. Yeah? Otherwise, they can Snapchat, they can do whatever, they can WhatsApp, they can whatever. You can't have them all at the same time. They are not interoperable, most likely. That's the problem. So Omar, you had the email, right?
Yeah, I saw the email, yeah.
Okay, so Bruce was just, we were discussing a bit about, what did you say, Bruce, that the whole world is absolutely turvy, upside down, yeah? That's what we were saying.
I think the interesting thing about the world becoming less predictable is that you need to give much more thought about how you can reduce the uncertainties associated with this unpredictability. Mm-hmm. Because some areas are much more uncertain than others, mm-hmm. and some people just want to give up altogether, which is very unhelpful to them, and it's not going to improve the quality of their decision making now.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Omar?
No, but how can technology reduce this status of increasing unpredictability? But what would be the role of technology in addressing that?
The role of technology, in particular, is that it enables us to systematically collect a lot more information, and it enables us to do much more sophisticated analysis of the connections between the information. That is very, very relevant to this climate change debate.
For instance.
For instance, yes.
Any complex.
But it doesn't remove the human element that requires us to focus on what it is we want to know from the answers that the technology helps us get to.
Mm-hmm.
Does that?
But the more sort of urgent or pressing issue at the moment is this so-called fake news. How does technology? How can technology address that?
Local state news.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake,
Oh, fake news.
fake news. Everything now is about fake news. Alternative truth. Is it alternative facts?
Yes.
I think it's good.
Unfortunately, the arguments behind fake news have a certain amount of credibility because in an awful lot of cases for a long time we have had situations where information has been put into the public domain without identifying the source of that information. Mm-hmm. It's rather like producing an academic paper that doesn't quote the references. And the credibility should be associated with the source of the information, which you can then check directly. Now, a lot of this fake news immediately comes from a source that doesn't have very much credibility. But we have found in even very reputable newspapers historically that a lot of gossip occurs in the papers where people say a spokesman said, somebody said, somebody else said. Well, really that isn't good enough, and unless there are very, very important issues of national security, we should try to reduce the number of anonymous sources that make it difficult for us to check the information. But the whole essence of having a professional or a scientific approach is always to be skeptical and to want to be able to reduce the uncertainty about information that you get given. Very occasionally you have scientific papers which are in effect
so in scientific discovery or scientific finding always requires verification and confirmation by other researchers. Then after going through that, then it becomes accepted as knowledge at that particular time. It can still change if as you get new evidence.
Indeed.
And you get new evidence as your experimental technology or techniques improves. But that is the traditional insofar as scientific activities is concerned. But when fake news and alternative facts is in the realm of politics, this is where it causes a lot of confusion and a lot of unpredictability. And I think this is what is concerned most people all over the world now, because there are so many so-called fake news or alternative facts being fed, for general consumption. I think this is, and eventually that is going to affect the scientific community as well. So this is what to me is a very disturbing kind of a development.
It is disturbing, that's correct. And the difficulty in the political arena, to a much greater extent than should be the case, various people have vested interests in particular bits of information which
Yeah.
they then classify as facts when they're not.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, if you look historically, that sort of situation would, that information would be defined as propaganda, because you know that the source has a vested interest
Yes.
in a particular line of argument. Under very confrontational situations, you tend to get an escalation of propaganda, because various parties think that they have a lot at stake that's much more important than whether the facts are correct.
But Omar, in the question, because if they come in, I don't know if Gabi is also online.
I am, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Now,
Did she hear?
you could hear Omar and Bruce, right?
Yeah, I did. I was just, I was actually thinking about an article that was written in the Journal of Design and Science by Neri Oxman, and something came to mind, a quote from there. If you don't mind me just mentioning it, it says, "The Enlightenment is dead, long live the entanglement." We are at the dawn of the age of entanglement.
Yeah.
In the last age, the age of enlightenment, we learned that nature followed laws. By understanding laws, we could predict and manipulate. We invented science. We learned to break the code of nature, and thus empowered, we began to shape the world in the pursuit of our happiness. We granted ourselves godlike powers to fly, to communicate across vast distances, to hold frozen moments, and so on and so forth. Even time we harnessed. The same laws that allowed us to explain the motions of the planets enabled us to build the pendulum of mechanical clock. Thus, time itself, once generated by the rhythms of our bodies and the rhythms of the heavens, was redefined by the rhythms of our machines. With our newfound knowledge of natural laws, we orchestrated chains of causes and effect in our political, legal, and economic systems, as well as in our machines. Our philosophies neatly separated man and nature, mind and matter, cause and effect. We learned to control, and that's where I find it's very hard to get away from that control. Eventually, in the ultimate expression of our enlightenment exuberance, we constructed digital computers, the very embodiment of cause and effect. Computers are the cathedrals of the Enlightenment, the ultimate expression of logical deterministic control. Them, we learned to manipulate knowledge, the currency of the Enlightenment, beyond the capacity of our minds.
Okay.
We constructed new realities. So, thus, within this moment to Enlightenment thinking, we sowed the seeds of its demise. We began to build systems with emergent behaviors that were beyond our own understanding, creating the first crack in the foundation, and thus going into entanglement.
Well, I mean, there was a Nobel Prize for entanglement about 2 years ago.
Yes.
And about enlightenment, we were just discussing 2 days ago, Omar, I was saying that, do we believe that this and that government is so enlightened to understand the value of CPTM, smart partnership type of fabric? And because the idea of combining expertise and like Omar and others like Omar bringing in the system for 20 years and so into the government systems somehow, so that there is a more informed decision. So a science advisor's office is kind of, or science advice is being not very far from a leader, and so on and so on. All these things seem to have gone nowhere, because the sudden ability to combine data into analytics and new type of facts, which are not facts, but they are realities of a different type. And I'm not saying, Omar, that science advice, as you've done it so extraordinary for so many years, it doesn't exist, but it's more at the expert level where you are listened to. But otherwise, at the macro level, political level, I mean, it's getting lost because there are these alternative realities that are coming into place. What do you think, Omar? So I don't know what is the role of science advisor, I'm saying right now, unless he's a revolutionary and so on, a freedom fighter.
They talk about evidence-based advice.
That comes from business, actually, saying, you need evidence, otherwise, isn't it so?
But that's the science has always been evidence-based, but the evidence may change as your method of inquiry improves. You get new perspective, so the evidence changes as well.
But going back to Bruce, I don't know what's happening with 29ers in Uganda. They have this problem, but they were online and then they couldn't hear us and all that. But they will come.
I have to go in
a moment. If we can wait another few minutes and then. But going back to the way Bruce brought in the issue of increase of uncertainty, increase of it is in a way paradoxal, because the more so-called facts and evidence-based seem to come to light, the more uncertain we seem to be. And the reason why is because probably those so-called facts or evidence, it's so synthetic.
Yes, that's what it is.
Or whatever is the word.
Yeah, the age of entanglement is synthetic and comes from putting things together.
Well, Bruce, because this is important for vision making and so on.
I wonder whether we're not, I mean, thanks, or partly the problem of the internet is now that we have the opportunity of having so much easier access to diverse information, and that certain people, the media again, have a vested interest in the most extreme bits of information, because that is how they define news. And we're all to blame, because without the more unusual bits of information, things get boring. And I think that one of the things that contributes to this is that the readers and the users, up to a point, enjoy the sensationalism of
entertainment,
the
of the whole
extreme elements of it, because the core part of it is rather very boring. And so we've got a new area that is much more people focused. If you want to understand the realities, the political agendas, the media agendas, because of having many more sources, they're also becoming under much more competitive pressure to be more and more sensationalist. And the question really is, how far does this matter to the reality of day-to-day decision making for everybody else?
I mean, there is no point
but
of reference.
There is also the recipients or the personal bias. Sometimes you search for the information or for the news that fits in with your bias.
Yes.
Rather than being open-minded and listening to all and then making up your mind after that. In most cases, you search for the news or for the information that confirms your preconceived ideas or whatever it is. So that can be.
Yeah, that's right.
Another issue.
But Omar, I mean, there is so much about data for the people, and David Hand sent specifically a few bullet points to these 29ers for today, which are Then Accenture, they produce a technology vision every year, and this year is technology for people, the era of intelligent enterprise and all that. I mean, the question is that the kind of data that we are talking about are more related to this metadata. The abundance of that, the bigness and all that of data is a metadata, not the data that we were used with, the statistics, the whatever it is. There is a metadata, and that is something which is qualitatively is not visible, is not possible to understand, to visualize. That is possible to be analytically dealt with by robots, by artificial intelligence, by analytics, or whatever you call it. And that is where there is a big kind of alienation of actually the human ability to deal with metadata analysis in relation to trends and so on, as different from what we are used to think in terms of data. Yeah?
That's important, but I think before that, in the general discussion of information and the sources of information, the first question that we all have to ask is, does the source of that information have a vested interest in the way that the information is being interpreted?
Yes.
Right, that's true.
And if so, what is it? And if so, how can that vested interest be made more transparent in order for other people to assess the credibility of the information?
So I believe that, based on that, there is a big robots, the first robots in Science Museum exhibition, which has assesses historically what meant a robot about 100 years ago or 300 years ago up to today. But what was very interesting up to today was one robot that is the first one of that kind, a Swiss robot, ABB, which is a collaborative robot between human being and a robot. So you work together, so you can compare the data, metadata analyzed by a robot with the data as a human can see it, with values, with emotions and everything else. And I think that's the future, is a new type of dialogue, Omar, and collaboration between the robot and the human.
Yeah.
It's a completely different thing.
I have to excuse myself.
Okay, Omar, what do we tell them if they come online? Because we'll wait a little bit longer, but...
Yeah, but
happy overall strategy.
Yeah. Good luck and keep up the enthusiasm.
It's a pity that...
nice interacting with you, and Gabby, enjoy the sunshine.
Oh, thank you very much. Same. Yeah, I'm sure the rain will pass.
Well, for a change, Omar, you didn't have a board meeting before you went to bed midnight and having nightmares.
Yeah,
Hope now we can have dreams.
I have to two nightmares after board meeting.
So many board meetings, yeah. Okay. No,
Okay,
thank you
then,
very much for
thank you
coming
very
online.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Gabi, can you wait a little bit more? I don't know what they are doing.
Yes, I can. Yeah, I actually postponed my meetings with the values committee to next week
Club of
because
Rome.
one of the members of the committee is not well. So.
Right. Okay.
What,
Can you explain a bit about the values?
what's the values committee?
Okay, within the Canadian Association for the Club of Rome, we have started 2 years ago. It was identified in our strategy that values was a very important
Absolutely.
topic, but
Absolutely.
nobody knew how to approach it. We had a few startups, but nothing much came out of it. However, starting in August last year, myself with two other members, we formed a committee and we started having a series of discussions, and we devised a first presentation and a workshop within KCOR, and we called it values in an ecology. Values exist in an ecology of tensions.
Gabi, just any moment, the 29ers from Kampala,
Okay.
they will come in, but the problem is that nobody else can be online. So it's simply one-to-one because they are all into one place. So it's one-to-one, although there are many there.
So
Hopefully.
you better let them. Yeah.
Let's see,
Okay.
let's
Well,
see.
I don't know how you
Just gonna do it
manage
through the
that.
mobile, yeah? Okay, so just one moment.
Could you send to Bruce something from
Yes.
about the values? Because
Yeah. Well, we have devised a superposition of paradox values,
Okay.
ecology of tensions.
okay, I will
The choices and creation of values in the center, and I can send you that paper. Definitely that we
Okay.
have we presented
Did you put
a
on
week and a
screen?
half
Okay.
ago.
Hello, Florence.
We're progressing from there. The next one will be including.
Okay, fine. So
Okay,
it looks like
Sorry, Gabby, it's all getting a bit confused
looks
here. I'll call you
like-
back from the other line.
Florence.
I'll call.
Hello.
Online.
Okay. Right. So I hope I can hear you here, and Professor Bruce.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so I don't know what happened, but we'll assess that later because already it's half an hour gone. So Omar, our chairman from Kuala Lumpur, wished you well, and we had a very good discussion on your behalf. And I will send you the recording of the discussion while waiting for you. But who is still? You are all at Nomo Gallery, right?
We are no more gathering.
Okay, so who is there at the moment?
I'm with the Imran. I'm with Teddy Ronald. I have Tenyange David. I have Chimuli Ronald. I have Rugoa Jeremiah and Kasej Tadeo plus Eric.
Well, I mean that's quite a lot. Andrew Kawa is not there because
Pardon?
he's there. Okay. You have got the agenda, right?
Yes.
Okay. So well, thank you very much to Florence and I don't know if Mark is around and everybody else. And I think the whole idea was that we have an open discussion, but within that there were three dimensions that we kind of highlighted there. And this was only because I believe that the Smart 29er group, and it could be larger, not the entire very large group, core group, could actually trigger in Uganda the implementation of this new integrated program of the type of initiatives that we have around the leveraging value of data and knowledge with the central bank and with the national statistics, including standards and so on, and the vision, of course. So I believe that if we are able to, probably won't be able to go through all the dimensions, but through, let's say, 3 of those that I highlighted there, and whatever else you want, then I could very well, if you agree, inform His Excellency President Museveni that you are prepared, but you require some, obviously, tools. You are prepared to form the core group for carrying forward, initiating the entire leveraging of value of data in Uganda and therefore in the movement. So that's the reason why I'm doing that. Now, I'm doing that not because I'm saying that is 29ers, the young ones, could understand, but because you did show a lot of resilience in the last so many years, irrespective of the frustrations that you had. And you are also quite inspired, each of you, and I have got quite a lot of diverse experience and expertise, yeah? And you were able to mobilize. So, since Dar es Salaam. So, Professor David Hand, as I said, there was, he put last night a few bullet points for you, which are probably a little bit too specific, about key data tools, which could be associated with getting the central bank or the National Statistics Institute into the mode of using and leveraging the data, yeah? And for that there is training, there are all sorts of things about it. You can we have some discussions about it? I have Professor Bruce Lloyd here with me, who will also intervene, but it's up to you how you go about among yourselves. Who want to start? Say for about 20 minutes max. And then we go into networks. Please, go ahead. That's all right, Bruce.
She said there are a number of issues. What has raised on one.
Okay, who is? I can't see your face. Who is?
You can't hear.
No, I can hear, but I can't see who you are.
Yeah, we got some bit of cut off of the network, but some of the text we have had.
Okay.
Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear well. We can hear you here.
Yes. You said we can now discuss on the challenge. One of the challenges that you will send. First of all, you said you will send the text of the recording of what you have been discussing today. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. If you look at the agenda,
the next one.
if you look
The
at
next thing was that the network, since we have the network problem here in Uganda and communication together with the Smart 29ers,
okay,
and you said if it was possible, then we can discuss in the matter and see how you can present this one to the president and see how best the Smart 29ers in Uganda can be having access to a clear network so that since we are all together on the conference, but we have a problem of the network to access on this teleconference.
I suppose,
Then the other-
no, hold a second. I suppose this is a kind of
Yes?
administrative issue, which obviously we have to. This is a matter of infrastructure that you are raising. Do we have or we don't have a network? I am not discussing about the network. That is an important, very important issue. I'm talking about the 3 issues that I suggested on the agenda, which is the 3 issues were key data technologies for central banks and statistics, and role of smart 29ers. Number 2, scale-free networks of people and super hubs as tools to move ahead. And number 3, the vision thing. Because we can start with a vision if you want, yeah, if that's easier for you. But that is part of the of a program that has to be initiated in Uganda. And Professor Mutabile is very ready to get involved. National statistics the same, but they do require a core group which is continuously moving the whole program, and I'm suggesting that Smart 29 could be those. Of course, you'll need to have to be almost a super hub. That's why I put super hub there. Having infrastructure and so on. But let's discuss a little bit about the issues that are involved in the smart partnership type of initiatives, which are sort of connected with the value of data nowadays. Yeah? So, if you've seen the email, there were some data tools, data technologies that a professor from Imperial College, David Hand, identified for you. But we can start with the vision if you want. So, shall we do that? Because I think... Shall we do that, Florence?
So you're saying that we discuss smart partnership initiative on data technology.
Exactly.
We also discuss data relating it to Vision 2040.
Correct.
Then you also said that we are going to discuss key data technology for central banks. That's what I've got for
yes. I mean, these are substantive issues, and we can touch base on them, but they are part of this new program that needs to be launched in Uganda. And Professor Mutabile is very, very much backing that up. And of course, President does that. Okay? So let me start you up with Bruce, Professor Bruce Lloyd, who is here, around the vision thing. Because you heard a lot about, we talked a lot in the last few years about Vision 2040 and all that. I specifically didn't bring in Wilberforce because we want to have an overall view about it, about the vision thing and how data impacts positively and otherwise on the vision thing. Now Bruce, Professor Bruce Lloyd is very well known, comes from private sector, so is very pragmatic, have seen things work or not work, and is called also by governments to advise in the last few years, in foresight and so on. So let me bring Bruce, and maybe then you are commenting on the vision thing, as I call it. Bruce.
So thank you very much. Yes, I've ended up in the academic world, although I have a lot of private sector experience. And the interesting issue around data and information to start with is the extent to which it is independent from the vested interests of the potential sources that supply the information. In recent years, we in Britain have established an organisation called the Office of National Statistics, partly because people didn't really have confidence in the statistics that were produced by the government, because they recognised that the government had a vested interest in producing statistics that supported their particular arguments. Now, I'm not quite sure how far that is relevant to an institution that might be set up in Uganda and other parts of the world, but it is terribly important, especially in this day of fake news on the internet and other places, for the population and the governments to have a source of information that they can have confidence in. Now that is a useful starting point. The questions then arise: what are the important issues that institution needs to address, and why are they important? The measurement of economic progress, so-called, is one thing that governments use to establish their credibility, and we widely use the concept of GDP that I'm sure you're aware of. But we do have to recognise that GDP is a quantity measure and not a quality measure, and so you have a lot of major question marks over whether that is the appropriate measure of societal progress. And so we're now developing in different parts of the world more sophisticated social progress indicators, which enable people, in a way, from the bottom up and from the top down, to define what it is that the government is trying to do to improve the living standards of the population.
In fact, in Australia, if I just go there, the other day, we've got, I think I sent to you a note from the Prime Minister, Department of Prime Minister of Australia, who is terribly interested. They are very interested in in this project of leveraging the value of data, and they are saying that they themselves, they've got a public data policy branch, the public data branch in the Prime Minister's office. Now, this is different from the usual kind of data and statistics, GDPs and all the rest of it in Treasury, Ministry of Finance or whatever it is. And why is that? Is because of why Bruce is saying. There is a need for confidence building in the public that the data that is being used by Prime Minister or Presidents is a data that is representative. Yeah? Okay?
Yes.
So so here we are. So all that is related to
the other nightmare that we have at the moment, all of us, largely because of the internet, is that we can get into data overload. We can have so much data that it makes it even more important that we know what we want the data and information for, because a lot of people get involved in just collecting information and data without focusing on what's really important.
Yeah. I suppose there is this metadata, which is process data, which is enormously a kind of referred to as big data, which confuses completely the ability of human being to analyze the patterns, the emerging patterns from it. And that is where David Hand was making a point about the data science revolution, which we were talking together in Kampala at the end of January. I think training and professions in these data science revolutions are the name of the game in the future. And I had the other day somebody coming here at the hub and give me, there's a young lady coming with a card saying that what her profession, her job, actually not profession, is an app integrator lead. I said, I know what is an app, I know what is an integrator, and you are a lead of the apps integrator in your organization. I said, yes, we are about 20 of app integrator leads. I don't know how much they are paid, but I don't know exactly, what functions they have for that organization, what they produce, what is the outcome of them, but I do understand that there is a need for that profession. So these are data tools that are being used in relation to metadata, not data as we know it.
I think the critical point that you made there is the whole concept of pattern recognition.
Yes.
And that is very, very critical in trying to establish the confidence that you can have in trends. Cycles, when is a cycle not a cycle? When is a trend going to change? What are the things that are likely to change in the future that will influence a trend? Now, it's very difficult for the computer to tell you the answer to that. So, because we'll see whether in a few years' time they might be able to do that to a greater extent, but it's a very difficult issue in all sorts of areas now.
Actually, there is just to tell you, and probably will bring you in now, literally, I think you need to come in to give your own views from whatever point of view you feel like is useful and practical. But there is a view that the definition and the role of an expert and the intervention of an expert has to be done in a very appropriate way, so to speak, rather than, and it has to be defined that somebody is expert in something very specific. And that expert, as Bruce was telling me a little bit before, is able to ask informed questions, and therefore making all of us who are not experts in that to understand trends and patterns.
But the real value of an expert is that they don't have a vested interest.
This is.
And the real challenge that happens today, and certainly we found this over here recently, is experts have been used by politicians and the media to interpret their expert advice in a way that suits the vested interest.
So they are pseudo-experts. They become pseudo-experts.
Well, it's not the expert. You've got to understand that it's the distortion of the credibility of the experts.
Yeah.
And that is now being compounded by some of these other people saying that's because we don't have any credibility in experts.
Yeah.
But it's not the experts that are the problem. It's the way that they're used.
So I suppose in Uganda, the experts say related to either within agriculture, is very specific products or the trees, the way the trees grow, don't grow, and related to climate change and so on. Or the oil production and the spin-offs from the oil production, or the technologies related to the oil, those could be obviously misused. Experts' input could be misused, and therefore, if a vision is built on misused information, misinterpreted information, data from experts, then the Vision 2040 will never be able to be built with confidence. People don't have confidence in it. So my view is that there is a need for articulating today in present as far as one can in any areas, that is agriculture, schooling, training for data, whatever, has to be articulated the presence as much based on facts as possible with expert input at a micro level. The rest, if it's being picked up by journalists, by politicians, by civil servants, all those are becoming adulterated, and the vision cannot be built on that adulteration. Yeah, it can be built on hands-on facts. So I mean, okay, shall we see what you have, all of you? Let's have one by one.
Is anybody still there?
Florence?
Yes, we are on.
Okay, so go ahead and ignore.
Jeremiah is going to.
Okay, ignore what we said, one by one. You go ahead.
Yes, hello. This is Jeremiah.
Jeremiah, we missed you in January, but we talked about you.
These are important points you are putting across regarding the value of data and the necessity to build confidence in the public about whether the data collected is representative or not. And I think one of the other critical areas you raised was the evolution of data science, and examining data in relation to volumes, that is big data and mega data. I think in that respect, electronic data is absolutely crucial. Information that has been processed, and by processing techniques, and thereby controlled and stored for purposes of data analytics, because I think one of the critical aspects to regarding big data is the ability to examine that data and emerge information that can confidently be used to resolve particular matters. Mm-hmm. And software technology and information technology and data science technology, I think, is an important aspect in that respect. But even the very facilities that are supposed to be storing such data, because as we are familiar with the public-private divide, whereas the public sector, that includes government and government parastatals, engage in data collection for purposes of registration, population census, planning, and the like. Even in the private sector, with the emergency of the internet and prospectively the Internet of Things, we are familiar with data collection in the private sector. I mean, Facebook and Google are the apotheosis, the classical examples in that respect, because huge volumes are collected by the data centers of social networking sites like Facebook and Google, and from there, using algorithms of data analytics, managed to emerge with the consumer profiling demographics and information about the users of Facebook for purposes of predictive marketing. Because essentially, ultimately, one of the benefits of such big volumes of data is to predictively predict the behavior of the data subject.
Yeah.
But I think even with regards to maximally utilizing big data, whether it is personal big data or public big data. I think they are recognized official guidelines, such as those that were laid down by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, which I believe you're familiar with.
Yeah.
About 8 principles: openness policy with regards to the utilization of data, the principle of accountability by the data collector, whoever is trying to use it, then the security safeguards with regards to data collection. I think the incorporation of those guidelines in the practice of processing, collecting, and utilizing big data are important in effectively utilizing big data to the maximum advantage, whether personally or at a micro business level,
Yeah.
or the national level, if you want to use a qualitative measure for that. So the other individuals that would like to, in addition to that, I think even the genomics project, which has been a significant breakthrough in recent years, but with regards to biological organisms, I mean, this decoding of nucleotide bases of living organisms, beginning with the human genome, acetyl, cytosine, thymine, and guanine, which is building the groundwork for molecular medicine, personalized medicine, and precision medicine. The entire idea of determining the propensity of individuals towards certain diseases by looking at their personal human genome, and even for the pharmaceutical industries, manufacturing particular drugs that are pharmacologically tailored towards specifying the health challenges. And so that is within the sphere of health risk assessment.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
I mean, the whole thing is, when we talk about the vision thing, I'm calling vision thing because among ourselves we know what we talk about. We don't talk about the vision, the document, the national planning. We don't talk about the bureaucracy of it, or the politics of it, or the manifesto and so on. We talk about the vision process, which process is very much dependent on this data and the metadata and the way people can associate with that. Therefore, they have confidence in it, in describing what's happening today. Therefore, I'm pulling myself to say what can happen tomorrow because I trust that data or that information. Yeah. So the vision thing is very much dependent, in my view, both on the tools that Professor David Hand was, the type of tools that he described in the email which I sent to you, the more recent developed methods, in addition to those that Bruce was talking about, and measuring economic progress, but which need to be updated because GDP type is totally unrepresentative nowadays. So now, what are we missing in Uganda actually? Because you have, for instance, a central bank, and the reason why we mention central bank in many countries is because they are actually very influential, and they are making statements based on data, economic data, and they are based on national statistics offices giving them data, or more recently, they are real-time data from data centers, and the question is how much can they rely on those? Are they allowed to use those data that they can buy or they are provided by data centers? For instance, those data that are being accumulated through mobile exchanges on financial inclusion or anything else. I mean, that data is available in any second to a central bank. Is not that data available to potentially? That data is not available to national statistics offices. They need to still do surveys, and they're aware about that. So, I mean, when central bank says, I think we need to do this today on the economics side, yeah, or not only central banks, but they are aware that the data they are using, is not necessarily, and that is where we need to come in, is not necessarily based on some of these more recent methods. I mean, Professor Mutabile is very much aware about all this blockchain technology, for instance, and he's trying to say, well, we are not ready as a bank to use blockchain technology, for instance, for this and that and the other. On the other hand, a blockchain technology is very useful in relation to fraud. And the central bank is very much interested in fraud, to try to stop fraud. So there are issues around tools for data to give the data that is being used in relation to the economy kind of weekly and monthly that requires to be brought in. And for that it requires people and individuals who are thinking that way. And there are very few that think that way, that they practice machine learning. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that is louder, especially with regards to blockchain technology and whether the central bank is ready. So Mark would like to make a contribution on just what you are talking about.
Okay.
Economic data, the blockchain technology.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay, Mark, yeah.
Mark here. Sorry I'm late, but nevertheless I'm here.
We didn't know you were late, so baby, you shouldn't have told us.
Okay. Yeah, going back to the topic, leveraging knowledge and data for emerging economies, and specifically data for economic data. My opinion of this is in regard to the emerging challenges that economies all over the world are facing. The question of demand and supply comes in handy because the economies are based on the changing demand and supply of goods and services. So the amount and type of data that is generated from that keeps on being dynamic. Our part in the smart initiatives that we need to undertake is to be able to adapt to the emerging challenges of the economy all over the world. And therefore, when we are networking, being dynamic enough to appreciate the challenges that these economies are undergoing, it is critical in our decision making for countries that, especially the third world and developing countries.
No, Mark, when you say developing country, say Uganda, Uganda is both developed and developing at the same time. Would you say so? You're aware about it, Jeremiah aware, and so many others. So you can't associate yourself by just being a developing. Am I not right?
Yes, you're right.
So, you know, if we speak about Uganda itself, I mean, it has patterns of being developed, maybe even more developed than other developed.
Can I say one thing there that just struck me, and which is very, in a way, very relevant and sobering. And I think that there is more trust between people in a rural community than there is between people in a financial market. And if that's the case, the financial market is underdeveloped compared with the rural community.
Absolutely.
And this, I'm not personally worried about the technology, but I'm very worried about people and how they relate to other people.
Yeah.
And how people have vested interests that they don't declare, and how they exploit other people unnecessarily or in an unjustifiable way. And that from a technology point of view, we can find better ways of analyzing data and providing information, but in the end, the use of that data and the use of that information depends really on people. And I think we've all got a lot to learn from everybody else around the world. If we look inside the financial system, the fraud issues, the scamming issues, these are the areas that are challenging the whole system, because the people are not trusting it. They can't trust it. So we've got to produce more and more sophisticated technology, which may or may not make it more trustworthy.
This is a paradox. Yeah.
And
okay. Yes,
that's related to a comment I saw recently that was looking at where was the next financial crash going to come from? And the comment was that we were going to have one, but they weren't clear where it was going to be. That's partly related to the fact that what are the key areas that we have to closely watch, and whether there are organizations, just as we found with Lehman Brothers, there was a whole vested interest in that organization in believing that they had a great deal more credibility than they did. But the issue that really is complicating things is the growing amount of interdependence that we have. And again comes back to the so-called developed world. The developed world is much more interdependent and therefore more vulnerable than the traditionally
communities like in Uganda. So one could take advantage of it. This is can leverage these strengths, which otherwise is look like weakness or underdeveloped, but in fact is a great strength. Anyway, Mark, go ahead, and the others. That's very, very good points, I think. Yeah. Mark.
Yeah, practically, I was looking at, for instance, East Africa. Because of the natural climatic challenges, for instance, the data collected from the change in the climate is what is used to make, for instance, economic decisions in terms of making the population survive. We have tremendous hunger or drought in Kenya.
We have South Sudan. There's a lot of drought.
Somalia.
So, Somalia. So rather than economic data can be leveraged to make a population survive, vis-a-vis the point my previous colleague was making, that interdependence amongst people and trust is key. Maybe we can term it as silent capitalism. So that's the intentions that people don't reveal. But then there are those real challenges that affect the population.
That's it.
And the population needs to survive. Therefore, economic data needs to be utilized for survival of population, survival of countries, and focus of governments in terms of their economic decisions, because we could not look at an economic decision driving towards infrastructure development when the population is struck by hunger and they are dying. So basically I'm looking at leveraging economic data in a practical way through being able to accept the dynamic challenges that affect our society and
Very
country.
good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very, very good. So, what about the others? Who else is there?
Beg your pardon?
Who else is there? Is
We have Ronald.
Ronald?
Hello? Yes.
Okay.
Ronald Shumo.
Hi, Ronald.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. To go back to whatever we have been discussing, I want us also to go to the layman, the things that really, how data really affects the layman. We are talking about the common person down. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. We hear you.
Yes, it's the common person down. We will look at agriculture. I think data is very important in agriculture and how we make our decision on which kind of crops to plant in which area. Data is well collected and kept and is made available to all people at a cheap rate or at free rate. Then it's at districts coming down to villages and sub-counties. People can make informed decisions on when to plant or when to plant what. When it comes to what kind of inputs and the market etc. I think that is very, very important when it comes to keeping data in agriculture. Mm-hmm. Then also the slightly of love also. I think you talked about it. You talked about Bank of Uganda, but there's what they call. There's the financial sector. Data is also very important here. Yes, planning for the people. So recent, I think in the last 5 or 10 years, there is what they call mobile money, where we use
Yes.
phones to make transactions. Yes, this is done in Uganda, all the mobile companies, and then in Kenya, I think there's and then in Rwanda. This has helped so much. I think this has come as a result of good data and availability of data. That's when some people came up with this idea, especially the one for Kenya, I think. That gentleman from the village somewhere down there, he used that loophole whereby few people would access money and financial services. So he developed that app for mobile banking. It has helped out so much. And then I think it has also helped out the central banks to know how to deal with this kind of sector, especially the poor people down in villages who can't go to commercial banks. Then accessing also soft loans. Also, we look at people, especially people who deal in what they call microfinances, who can get money from microfinances. Through this kind of data that has been collected by researchers and Bank of Uganda and the statistics and the statistics department in all these countries.
The problem is, Ronald, that when we talked to Ben from National Statistics Office last year, and I'm sorry he wasn't able to be with you now. But it will be useful to have a discussion, all of you, with him, actually, as it will be very useful to have about an hour or so to book Professor Mutebile and one or two others. Ben was saying that there are so many issues to be of credibility if they are going to use this new type of data analytics and so on, as different from the surveys that they do, traditional ones, which takes 3 years. Now, a bank nowadays cannot wait 3 years on mobile data that they are collecting, which is being collected as we speak. You see? So one needs to, when you see, we are attempting to speak about things or relate to as they happened about 3 years ago, not as they happen now and they are dysfunctionally integrated. This is what it is, the big drama. Yeah? Because the national statistic offices, they become irrelevant in relation to the ability to provide data or statistics, real-time data. Now the central banks themselves become irrelevant in relation to the mobile banking exchange. Do you see that?
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah, but the central banks have got a different role, and they've got even a bigger role of regulators in the country in relation to the new ways of collecting data and all the rest of it.
But just following on from that, it's very important, and we talked about this earlier on, to know why you want that data.
Data, exactly.
Because what the bank and lots of other people and the government produces a lot of information from data.
Yeah. Is it for the
but
people?
You have to start off with what are the decisions that it's important to get this data for.
Exactly.
And how are you going to use it?
Who are the users for this data?
Now, it's interesting when we talk about the disaster issues. Going back to weather forecasting. Weather forecasting is a very interesting case study because going around the world, a lot of people are involved in this and they all have the same vested interest in trying to improve the quality of the information that they give to customers. They don't necessarily know how they're going to use it. Some will be using it in lots of different ways. But over the years, largely because of new technology, the level of sophistication of the prediction of short-term weather has increased enormously.
Yeah.
Partly because of technology and partly because the people involved in it don't have a vested interest in distorting the information.
That's a very important point.
Now, when you get to the whole climate change arguments, the question about is it happening? What is causing it? What are the implications of it? How do we get better informed about the long-term trends, and then what can we do about them? What is the best way of dealing with these drought problems? Are they temporary or are they going to be permanent? In some parts of the world over recent centuries, you've seen, going back a few centuries, the Sahara Desert was a fertile land. Are we going to find that other parts of the world get turned into infertile land?
Yeah.
We know that over the overuse of certain animals, overpopulation in areas, make it very difficult for it to be sustainable. So we have to deal with the issues in a particular way. On the other hand, if you had unlimited money, you could put pipelines of water across the Sahara Desert and turn it back into agricultural land. These are the
implications, actually.
The implications, but they're trying to focus on what are the decisions that
and
we're having to take.
Who needs this
information and why?
That's a very, very good point about weather. Okay, Ronald, any?
Yes.
If you have something else, but shall we go through other colleagues too, or you want to finish up?
They're here.
Okay, so let's. Is David?
This is David.
David?
This is David.
Okay, hi David.
I have a question about data in terms of corruption, because at times you cannot have it disclosed because of some corruption tendencies, and also with data it should be open to the general public, because there's some data which shouldn't be open to the public. I don't know. Those are my two questions.
Okay.
Corruption should be open to the public.
Corruption is a very big problem all over the world.
The corruption could be you give data which is not to corrupt.
Yes.
The way, not necessarily corruption money-wise. You don't need to use corruption in money.
It's the false use of information.
It's actually, that's it. I think that is much more dramatic.
A lot of issues around the world now have to try to work out how do you control inside information. And the paradox of that is that in a competitive situation, you only succeed in the future by knowing something that your competitor doesn't know.
And what is inside information?
So
is there still value?
Sometimes they have a vested interest in putting out false information. All the time the pressure should be on more transparency, more openness, and more discussion of the credibility of the sources of information, so
That's
people
it.
don't
there is
have
no other
the
way.
vested interest.
There is no other way except exposing.
That happens all over the world. It's not a developing country, developed country issue.
All. Actually, people focus on, there are standards recently on corruption and all that, but all focus on finance, and that's not what I think is the highest problem. That is a consequence of the other corruption on data that is being given as false information. And anyway, but this becomes quite interesting what we're talking about, and I don't know how long we still have. But anybody else? David, let's. Anybody else?
Okay, thank you. I'm handing over to somebody else.
Who else is Rachel? Okay, we'll have another probably 5 minutes or so. Please, go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Marina, this is Kasaija.
Kasaija, yes.
Yes.
What is your take?
My take on data is, because our topic is on data and knowledge, and basically how it can help government in advancing decisions, I would encourage that as young people, we need to take keen interest in information. But sometimes there is lack of data in a country like ours, given the fact that you could look for specific information and you don't access it. Sometimes you are listening, let's say, to a radio program or a TV program, and somebody is quoting figures. But you cannot go and cross-check you cannot counteract the information you are given. We don't have data and information centers in place where you could go and or where we could call it maybe incubation centers for data or information. There is very little research. Research has not extensively developed in our economy. So you will pardon me for dwelling so much on the negative trends of data in an economy, in a developing economy for that matter. But my understanding is it would help so much because if, for example, like in our economy where we have a decentralized economy, and we have a working budget which is possibly sent to the district, and then we have all these indices that we must use to measure. We've been talking about GDP as a measure that capitally advanced, but there are other indices, especially if you have looked at the provision of services. You will need to be backed by information and data. So, but sometimes there is a disconnect between what you see in the everyday lives of the people and what is being perceived to have been maybe a source of budgetary allocation.
That's it.
So my understanding is there is need now for young people to take interest in advancing that, because not all knowledge that is there is accessed by every young person. So you find young people who are not backed up by valid information. So the information sometimes we read or we get privy to is not valid in any way. So it cannot help us advance our arguments as young people. And then we need to go and now look for those gaps and how we can bring every young person maybe in the university and then we need to take interest. In fact, even as we advance primary education, secondary education, and the university, people should always be fact-based. And then from there they can advance an argument and they can be trusted on their word.
Yeah, I think most of the government departments and most of the universities are void of specialists or trained people in data science, and most of the data science is coming from the younger generation. So I think there is an extraordinary opportunity for infiltrating companies, government departments, local governments, with individuals who ask questions about what do you need data for, and then you produce that and you guide, because there has to be really almost like a revolution. But anyway, I think it's taking place quite differently from other issues where one campaigns about youth. You are needed anyway. And it's just a question of infiltrating, literally, each and every company, university, parliament, local government, you name it. Because they all need specialists in data. And data science is not necessarily just, as David Hand showed there, it's not necessarily extraordinary data science it's just there are tools that one can be trained with, even in situ. So anyway, maybe we'll have, I don't know if anybody else has a point, but we are running out of the time available from the teleconference time. So
yes, sir.
Anybody else wants to say something?
No, maybe I could give you to Florence, maybe to just wind up, because the people who have been here have at least made a contribution.
Okay, because we're running out of time, and probably Bruce will also want to say a word. I'm very glad he was here. He's,
Okay.
So Bruce, maybe you want to say, and then Florence, Bruce.
Okay, well, the only point I would make when we work out all these different ways of organizing and collecting and analyzing data and information, in the end we still have to make sure that we trust the people who are using it. And that is often the critical area for lots of societies, that we're, for all sorts of reasons that we don't have time to go into, undermining the trust levels that different people have in other people. And that is going to, we have to work on that as well, or our efforts will all be in vain.
And the idea of trying to corrupt in a way, or bring the attention to data without necessarily understanding the use of that data and who use it for. It brings in a false pretense that that data is kind of valid. So I shared with you last week my views from an exhibition on robots and artificial intelligence. And one of the main things I realized was the interaction between a robot and a human, which is a first of this kind, a collaborative dialogue between a robot with a human working together towards the same thing. Now there is a kind of intention there that the human is using the robot to ensure that the various data that one may kind of come about is being tempered by the false,
What happens when we can't trust the robots?
Well, we don't trust the robots, but the robots...
At the moment we do.
Maybe we'll have another discussion on about this. But Florence, please, you wind down, and thank very much for everybody.
I hope they found it useful.
But I hope you found useful, at least to take you away from the everyday environment that you have. Florence.
Yes, I think leveraging the value of data through the CPTM Partnership Initiative, it is very important and critical that the data that is being put on big network to be regulated. If certain data is put somewhere and it is not restricted, security-wise, it can put a threat on our national security. So the data that is being used, it should be regulated and it should be restricted to a certain group of people. Not all individuals must receive all the data, because if all data is open to the individual, say maybe security data, we might find ourselves not able to control what might come in our country. So there must be regulations on how data should be exposed to other people, especially security issues.
Yeah, I think all what we, in about an hour and a half, what we were able to do is to realize the importance of so many dimensions of this issue related to data within the government, within the rural, within whatever, in one country. And I think we do need to have a landscape of issues which are practically dealt with. Otherwise, there will be an ongoing dialogue that will need to take place, hopefully between humans, before we reach between humans and robots. So, and hopefully before 2020 we'll meet again, but well before that. Hopefully we have a smart partnership dialogue this year, and hopefully it's in Uganda.
All right.
Okay. No, thank you very much for all your effort, and thank you for those who hosted, and thank you to each of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and we'll try to. I recorded all this thing. We recorded. If I'm going to, we are going to. Joseph is going to try to send it to you, and you share it with everybody else. There are a number of reading tips. You let me know, all of you, Jeremiah and Ronald and Rachel and Kaseja, and those who didn't speak, weren't able to speak. Everybody, let me know what should we put to His Excellency President Museveni in note to say that we discussed about it. It needs to be very short, yeah? I mean very short, but saying that the 29ers are ready if there are a number of things that are being given to them to conduct this type of interactions and to ensure that people understand the value of data in very specific, practical, in agriculture, in finance, in standards, in statistics, and so on. I think this is what I thought probably we could do, yeah? But anyway, I'm very, very grateful for mobilizing today, and I'm sorry you're not here because we could share a cake or something together. Or I'm sorry I'm not with you there, which would be even better. All the best.